Is Australia the smallest continent or the largest island? When we discuss Australia's place in the geographical classification, another body often comes up. Of course, I'm talking about Greenland, aka the actual largest island, aka the most epic clickbait in history. Since Australia has been recognized as a continent, so maybe Greenland deserves it too. Perhaps we should lower the bar and allow this yet gigantic piece of icy land get a promotion. As noted in National Geography standards, people make up regions to decode Earth's complexity. Continents are distinguished merely to help us sort out and digest the enormous amount of geographical information we've got. And our planet's been lucky to have such ideal chunks of landmass for that. There are several more or less working classifications of continents. Each takes into consideration different criteria: geology, biology, history, culture, etc. Let's try to imagine in what way should Greenland change in order to compete with Australia for the title of the smallest continent. The task is hard, so what kind of change does come to your mind first? The size, I guess. Don't let maps to confuse you. Look at the globus instead. Australia, even without Tasmania and New Guinea, is 3 times larger than Greenland. Yes, the term continent does comprise the closest islands, primarily ones that share the same tectonic plate with the mainland. And here's where we can make our first move. There is an enormous bunch of islands neighboring Greenland to the west. It's Canadian Arctic archipelago. In fact, this is the largest archipelago on the Earth. By adding those 36,000 islands, we increase total area of our future continent by almost 70%. But how to justify such a daring scientific annexation? Both Greenland and Arctic archipelago belong to North America. They lie in close proximity to the mainland and are within the North American tectonic plate. The solution is clear. We give our continent its own tectonic plate. Let's call it the Arctic plate, and break it away from America. The new junction would extend from Laptev Sea, north of Alaska, south of Arctic archipelago, and all the way to mid-Atlantic, where it meets the Eurasian plate again. In order to get our continent separated from North America, the plate must actively move to the north and northeast. We divide the Arctic plate into 2 minor ones, thus making Greenland and Ellesmere collide and form a mountain range. These are the northernmost mountains on our imaginary Earth. We could call them Inuit. We've got some territorial gains, namely then peninsulas and now islands, Boothia, Melville and Ungava. Screw it. We get Svalbard too. And we're giving our plate a bit more active uplift, so some of the islands merge and make the continent less shredded. At this point, it's not just Greenland. Now it's a spectacular gathering of frozen rocks and glaciers. 4 million square kilometers in total. This is a pretty special object, since there's no one dominant mainland, but rather a bunch of subcontinents. Several massive chunks of land that make up what I'd call a polycontinent. So how would we name our continent? Arctica is asking for it, since there is Antarctica, Thule and Hyperborea might be good shots. Australia translates as Southern Land, so we could name our hypothetical continent respectively Northern Land or Borealia. Funny that Canada could have been named Borealia at one point of history. Such a great yet free name and a perfect match for Australia, isn't it? But hold on, Borealia is not ready for a serious relationship. It's not quite 18 yet. You see what I did? 18, continent, 18. Even with all the size and tectonic alterations, there's not much happening in the region. It's still cold, barren, and now even more isolated. It still is a relatively poor place in terms of geographical diversity. In other words, Borealia is boring. So let's fill it up with some cool stuff. Borealia needs more species, more landscapes, and perhaps more people. But we can't just drop them all there with an instruction, get comfy and chill. It's on the same latitude with Scandinavia, but they have not quite the same climate. One gets frozen and the other one gets wet. It is caused by the North Atlantic Ocean current, which carries the warm waters from the Caribbean Sea through the Gulf Stream. The current is powerful enough to drag the effect almost all the way to the North Pole. Warm ocean means more evaporation, thus more clouds, thus more rain, thus Britain. If only we could somehow turn the waters towards Greenland. It requires some kind of an island standing on its way, somewhere in between Iceland and Ireland. There are geological preconditions for such land to form there. Rockall Plateau, located northwest of British Islands, supposedly is an underwater block of continental crust. On a few old maps, there was some kind of a microcontinent located in this area, usually marked as Friesland. Although that might have been just a cartographer's fantasy that others picked up. Anyway, we'll make Friesland real in our speculation. The new current enters the Baffin Bay, and since there's no strait to the north anymore, it keeps circulating inside, giving up even more heat. Plus, cold Arctic waters don't slip in. So congratulations! Greenland now is indeed green. And we've just screwed up Europe. So how would that all affect the history and nature of Borealia? Greenland would be one of the most diverse islands in the world, with glaciers on the northeast, tundra on the west, and taiga on the north. The ice-free and permafrost-free parts of Greenland and nearby islands would disclose a fascinating terrain with lakes and rivers, pretty much similar to how actual Scandinavia looks like. The flora and fauna would be closely related to that of North America, but perhaps endemic to an extent. It could be the last shelter for the mammoth and other Pleistocene species, thanks to the specific climate conditions and isolation. Thereby, Borealia, just like Australia, could be considered a continent of relict fauna. But there's one little issue: Homo. Now the land seemed to be much more seductive for people to come over and settle. In one scenario, having a wide and deep strait could hold up massive migrations and prevent a potential collapse of such a fragile ecosystem, though even a small and sparse human population can lead to extinction of the megafauna. But let's assume that the indigenous people of Borealia did not exterminate all the animals. Oh, almost forgot. How do we call our new strait? I suggest to name it on the honor of Martin Frobisher, the guy who's first to explore this area in search for the Northwest Passage. His story was pretty dramatical, look it up, so I hope you don't mind. There are no Vikings in our speculation. The older Scandinavian climate would not facilitate such culture to be developed there. On the other hand, we've got Friesland, which could serve as a stopover for whoever lives on the older British Islands in sailing further to the north and west, thus filling up the historical niche the Vikings occupied in the real world. The history we know does not happen in this speculation, but Europeans, I believe, would still invade Borealia and America. With regard to the wildlife of Borealia, it did suffer, and the unique fauna was pushed to the verge of extinction. It could survive, however, like bisons, or even if not, at least we'll be taught in school that the mammoth were gone not thousands, but just hundreds years ago. As you could see, the size does not matter that much, but besides being relatively large, a piece of land also needs a unique nature and a whole bunch of other factors that boost its uniqueness in order to be considered a continent. Well, we've given our best shot with Greenland, but it's still not clear if that would be enough to upgrade its geographical status. So maybe it'd be easier to make Australia an island.